Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Sophia looked up in shock. Really? Will he stay if I want him to? Yet, despite the strong urge of expressing this thought to him, she could not say it out loud as Martha's words were like a curse haunting her. I have something to do tomorrow, so I might not be able to send you off. Otherwise, I would try to be there. I'm serious, said Sophia with a pout. Arthur sighed. It seemed like he was being delusional. It's fine. You don't have to come since you don't want to see me anyway. I'll go back to my country and inherit the family business. After that, I'll find someone suitable to marry and form a family with her. Now that I think about it, it actually seems quite nice. He acted like he had already planned out his future. Yet, Sophia suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable as she pushed him. Right, you're not young anymore. It's time for you to build a career and a family. Then, she turned around and quickly walked to the direction of her home before wiping her face. This action made the man chase after her. Then, he gripped her wrist, pulled her in and embraced her just as she was about to reach the entrance. This made Sophia fall onto his body. Looking up, she had a face full of tears, making her seem especially pitiful. Right then, Arthur was feeling a bit perplexed by his own words. Why would I say that to anger her? Somewhat upset, Sophia pushed him. Just leave if you want to. Why are you still holding on to me? Without saying a single word, Arthur hugged her. Sophia, who was full of tears by this point, buried her face in his chest out of embarrassment and sadness. Why are you crying? Are you that reluctant to see me leave? Arthur teased her. It was then Sophia heard the side door being opened and she remembered that her father had the habit of going out on walks. In the heat of the moment, she pulled the man to a corner of the villa. Quickly come here. My dad's coming out now. Although Arthur did not know why they had to hide like this, he still followed her instructions and went to the corner. The moment he hid himself, he hugged her tightly. This made Sophia blush again. Daddy just came out and here I am, hugging with some man. We'll be dead if he catches us. Yet, Drake went on his usual route as she only looked up after her father had disappeared from their view. All right. You should go now. If I don't go back home now, my mom's definitely going to get all anxious, Sophia stated sternly. Hearing this, Arthur let go of her and asked, Are you really not going to persuade me to stay back? Sophia was feeling bitter at his question. It was not that she did not want him to stay back, it was that she did not have the right to do so. Yet, she could only keep this to herself. Goodbye. I won't be seeing you off. Sophia then turned around and entered her home after entering the door pin number. Standing in the courtyard, she did not go to the main hall straight away. Instead, she went to a window and cried upon seeing the man drive off. Why does it hurt so bad? We didn't say that we like each other, nor have we confessed before. On top of that, we're not even lovers. On the plane. Laurelai, who was flying long distance just after a surgery, felt lethargic. She had found the perfect seat on the plane. Even though she believed that Elliot would look for her, she hoped that it would be in 5 years' time. By that time, she promised herself that she would come back with 2 children who resembled him. No matter how he was going to punish her or hate her in the future, she had already decided to have his child. Laurelai knew that she would never fall for another man again in her life. So, it would be enough for her as long as she could have Elliot's child. Deep at night, Anastasia was sitting in the first-floor living room without a hint of exhaustion as her mind was filled with rage. Laurelai's actions disgusted her. The moment Laurelai did that, she had disregarded all morality and did not even care about herself or her child. In the future, if I see her again, I will definitely not spare her. I will never forgive her for what she has done for good. Soon, dawn broke. Arthur's family had already packed their bags. Martha finally felt relieved for a little, believing that her grandchild would definitely stop thinking about Sophia after they went back to the main family. The distance from here and the life over there would make him forget about everything here. She hoped that he would take Emily as his wife, because they would have more in common since they were from the same society. On the same train of thought, Emily also wanted to leave here more than anyone else. She could not wait to return with Arthur since the sight of how romantic he was towards Sophia yesterday caused her to be green with envy and deep in panic. At 9:30 p.m., they arrived at the airport. At that moment, Sophia was sitting in the back of a cab while urging the driver, "Sir, could you please drive faster? I'm rushing to send my friend off." "I'm already going as fast as I can," the frustrated driver replied. Sophia knew that her sudden decision to head to the airport would leave one in a dilemma. Initially, she never thought of actually doing it. However, there was a strong wish of wanting to see Arthur that drove her to do this, although there was a possibility of her not seeing him at all. "Let's just consider it as me sending him off." Inside the premium lounge of the airport, Arthur kept checking the time on his wristwatch and spacing out thereafter. He looked like he was waiting for something, or rather someone, to arrive. Yet, his phone did not buzz at all. His face was scrunched up, making his handsome face look very solemn. This really proves that Sophia is a heartless girl. Meanwhile, a panicked girl rushed into the airport terminal, not knowing where she could locate him. Yet, she still ran around and tried to find Arthur amongst the crowd with an expectant yet anxious look on her face. Then, she accidentally bumped into a man as he bellowed, "Hey, watch your step." "I'm sorry." Sophia quickly apologized. She walked to the information desk, knowing that Arthur's flight must be a private one. Yet, the receptionist told her that these kinds of guests normally had their own private lounge. Hence, it was impossible for the public to just simply head inside and look for the guests. After hearing this, Sophia sighed and wiped the sweat away from her forehead. "Looks like I might not be able to send him off." Right then, the Weiss started to board the flight. Arthur was walking toward the boarding terminal absent-mindedly. Right in front of him, Martha was chatting happily with Emily while turning around to check on him several times. Gripping his phone tightly, he exhaled and dialed a number upon seeing his grandmother enter the plane. Sophia, who was spacing out while sitting on a bench, noticed that her phone rang. As she picked it up, her heart was beating wildly. It was Arthur. So, she quickly answered it. "Hey, are you already on the plane?" All of a sudden, Arthur heard the boarding announcement from the other end of the line and asked quietly, "Are you at the airport?" I'm here to send off a friend," a slightly embarrassed Sophia said. "Are you here to send me off?" "Yeah," she admitted reluctantly. His lips curled into a smile as it revealed a row of gleaming white teeth. He pressed his tongue against his cheeks, clearly delighted. "Don't leave just yet." "Huh?" The call was disconnected before Sophia received a response from him. Meanwhile, Arthur entered the cabin immediately, went straight to the cockpit, and told the 4 captains, "You must fly this plane back to Dansbury regardless of any other orders." "Do you understand?" "Young Master Weiss, aren't you going back?" one of the captains inquired. Arthur smiled as he looked out the window at the hot summer Sunday. "I'm not ready to return yet." Emily, who was sitting on the sofa, noticed Arthur hadn't boarded the plane, so she rose and went outside to look for him. "Has young Master Weiss boarded the plane?" she inquired as the flight attendant closed the door. The flight attendant had no choice but to lie, "He's in the cockpit." Despite the fact that Arthur had clearly left through this door, his order could not be "Then, I'll go look for him." "I'm sorry, Miss Jennings." The plane is about to take off and you are forbidden to enter the cockpit. The flight attendant intervened to stop her. Emily was irritated, but she knew she couldn't enter the cockpit for her own safety. So, she went back to her seat and sat down. When Martha learned that her grandson was in the cockpit, she was not surprised and thus consoled Emily. The Weiss family's private jet gave a quick shudder as it slowly taxied to the runway before taking off. Sophia couldn't figure out what Arthur's last sentence meant. Right then, her phone suddenly rang and it was a call from Arthur. "Hey. Where are you?" she exclaimed after picking up the phone in a hurry. "Where are you?" I'm at the baggage drop section in Zone E," she explained her detailed location. "I have good news and bad news, Sophia. Which one do you want to hear first?" She was confused. What is he doing? I'd like to hear the bad one first. Sophia randomly picked one. The bad news is that you will have to work harder in the future to earn more money. Huh? What about the good news? She had no idea what that bad news meant. Just as she was expecting Arthur, who was on the other end of the phone, to continue with the good news, a tall and handsome figure approached her from the crowd 5 meters behind her. When Sophia noticed that Arthur was silent, she exclaimed, "Hey! Hey! Speak up! Turn around!" Sophia jerked her head back in astonishment. She almost dropped the phone that she was holding because standing 3 meters away with one of his hands in his pocket was the man who was supposed to leave staring at her. "The good news is that I stayed because of you." Arthur told her the truth. Hearing that, Sophia took a deep breath. Didn't he board the plane? How about your grandma and Miss Jennings? Sophia questioned hastily. They boarded the plane. Are they aware that you did not board the plane? They would probably have already flown out of the country by the time they learn about it. As he spoke, Arthur approached her, stretched out his long arms, and took Sophia into his embrace, oblivious to the crowd around them. Sophia ignored the stares from others and hugged Arthur's waist while inhaling the strong cedar scent on his skin. A bittersweet feeling washed over her at this moment. Your grandmother will definitely be mad at you if she finds out, Sophia said as she raised her head to look at him. I believe she will not only be mad at me, but also freeze all of my credit cards and force me to return. So, Miss Goodwin, are you willing to take care of me? Hearing this, she burst into laughter in his arms. Okay. Then, tell me what's in it for me. I'll stay with you forever, Arthur stated solemnly. Sophia was not dumb to be swayed by his words. It's still me who's at a disadvantage, she snorted. Trust me, I won't let you suffer in this regard, he said in a hoarse and ambiguous voice. His words made her blush, so she pushed him and said shyly, You wish. After exiting the airport, Sophia decided to take Arthur to a city center apartment that her parents had purchased for her. He refused to return to his large villa because he no longer had bodyguards and servants. He had decided to follow Sophia around, he wanted to be entangled with her. Laurelai immediately left Hogland Airport with her assistant manager upon her arrival. Another assistant went to retrieve her luggage. Due to the slow communication with the police, the airport had yet to implement measures to arrest Laurelai. At this precise moment, Laurelai's assistant was dealing with another flight transfer. Laurelai then boarded another flight 20 minutes later to the country where she could give birth safely. 4 hours later, Elliot learned that she had left the airport as soon as his plane touched down. Following that, he discovered, with the assistance of local police, that she was departing on a chartered plane from a private airport. Her destination was a base town 4 hours away from where she was now. As a result, Elliot's plane immediately took off for Laurelai's final destination. Laurelai stepped off the plane after a 4-hour flight while the hotel staff was waiting to take her to her room. She was still a little worried as she sat in the car because of her fear that Elliot would eventually find her. She dialed her house number from her cell phone, and it was answered by her mother. Her mother took over all her father's plans after he was arrested. Kendra was worried about both her daughter and her husband. When she went to visit her husband in the morning, Liam surprised her with a plan. "Laurelai, look after yourself and the child in your womb. You can delay your return to Hogland for a few years since your father has made the arrangements." "Mom, as long as I'm not caught, I'll definitely go along with Dad's plan, but can you tell me what Dad told you? These should not be a source of concern for you. No matter what happens outside, you must remain at home. You must not go out, do you understand?" "What plan did Dad devise?" Laurelai inquired, surprised. "Anyway, don't worry about it," Kendra said solemnly before she added, "and don't worry about us either." "Okay, I'll take good care of myself." "Don't worry, Mom. You must look after Lewis. Give me a few more years, and I will definitely make our family powerful," Laurelai confidently assured her mother. Laurelai went straight to the arranged villa for confinement after hanging up the phone. In the meantime, a massive private plane landed on the brightly lit tarmac before it came to a halt. Elliot led 8 of his bodyguards out of the airport while the 4 SUVs that had gone through inspection were driven out by his staff. After he got into the car, he was about to check on Laurelai's whereabouts when he received a text message. It was an address. Following that, he received another incoming message. "This is Laurelai's location. Mr. Presgrave, I am on your side, so please believe me." It was attached with a photo of Laurelai. The picture was dated with the local time and had the scenery of the villa. Elliot, of course, would not believe that this person was assisting him. This individual was most likely a man sent by Liam to confuse Elliot. As a result, Elliot decided to investigate the private airport where Laurelai had chartered her plane from. She took a taxi and left the private airport, so it was likely that the airport staff knew exactly where she was headed to. Elliot's convoy took off, but it was trailed by an unobtrusive off-road vehicle. The man in the vehicle was talking on the phone. "The target escaped our trap and is now on his way to the private airport. Follow him, and when we get there, we'll do it together." The order was given by the person on the other end of the phone line. Nobody knew that Liam, who was far away in another country, had already planned a killing spree for Elliot. Liam realized that if Elliot died abroad, it would be more beneficial to his daughter after she gave birth. At the time, the grandson of the Presgrave family would be better equipped to fight for his fair share of the property. As a result, Liam dispatched someone to assassinate Elliot rather than stop him. Liam had spent a lot of money on this conspiracy, and it had to succeed. At this moment, Elliot's convoy arrived at the security room of the private airport. He bribed a security guard to gain access to Laurelai's departure surveillance footage. The bribed security guard was happy to search for the video footage. Very soon, all of the information about the vehicle Laurelai was in was obtained. It was true that money made the world go round. Elliot then went to a taxi company nearby, in which he was provided with the information he sought. The taxi Laurelai took stopped in front of a private villa in the town. Elliot immediately set out for this location after learning of this information. He couldn't wait to bring Laurelai back to Hogland to settle this matter because he was equally uncomfortable, if not disgusted. The bodyguard driving Elliot's vehicle was alert when he noticed an off-road vehicle following them on a wide road. "Get rid of them," Elliot instructed quietly, as he had guessed Liam would not stand by and watch. Elliot had nothing to worry about here. All he had to do was get rid of the trouble. When the order was given, the bodyguard behind drifted the car and slammed it across the road, blocking the car that was following them. The man in the car was so terrified that he slammed on the brakes hard. He belonged to a neighborhood gang. When he noticed the buff and tall bodyguard approaching him, he reversed and drove away quickly. Elliot's bodyguard waited for the car in front of him to disappear before speeding up to catch up to the cars in front. The gangster who was in the dilapidated off-road vehicle immediately called his own clan. "The target is approaching you. He's got 8 bodyguards. You should get more guys." "Which vehicle is the target in?" "Vehicle number 2. "Okay, we'll meet them at the front. We'll get rid of all of them in an instant." The man on the other end of the line sneered. In the car, Elliot dialed Anastasia's number and let her know about his situation. "Hey. Where have you gone?" Anastasia asked, clearly concerned. "I just arrived at the location where Laurelai has settled, and now I'm going to take her back to Hogland for surgery." "Then, you have to be careful. I doubt Liam will let you bring her back to Hogland so easily." "Don't worry, I've got this." Elliot consoled her. "Okay, good." He was looking around at the scenery when a string of dazzling rays of light flashed in the sky. "Be careful," he exclaimed. The leading car was hit directly by a missile, which caused the vehicle to bounce before it collapsed a few meters away and was catapulted. Fortunately, the entire car body was bulletproof, so the car was not blown apart. Immediately afterward, there was another sharp air braking sound, which was aimed at Elliot's car this time. The bodyguard who was driving swerved laterally to avoid the missile, causing it to explode on the ground. The road then collapsed into a large crater. "Rescue the car behind me. I'll take President Presgrave out of here." The captain of the bodyguard issued an order in a deep voice, and the team dispersed immediately. Anastasia, who was on the phone, heard the explosion and her heart tightened. She hurriedly shouted, "Hey, Elliot. Are you there? Can you hear me? What happened?" "Anastasia, we were ambushed. I'll call you later." Elliot calmed her down and hung up the phone. Hearing this, she stood up anxiously on the sofa and walked back and forth in place. How could she possibly be at ease? The explosion was deafening, as if it exploded in her heart. "He'll be fine. He'll be perfectly fine." Anastasia's eyes were teary and she had a panic attack after her son had been kidnapped last time. She was fearful of losing Elliot. She was worried that something bad would happen to him. However, she could only pray since she was so far away from him. After a few kilometers on the road, 3 off-road vehicles appeared and pursued Elliot's car. 6 motorcycles circled Elliot's car as they followed the vehicles. The vehicles behind were slowed down due to the rescue. At this point, Elliot's car became a lone force. "They have a lot of people, President Presgrave. Don't stop. This is their territory and we have no chance against them," Elliot calmly stated while he added, "Drive toward the city center to get rid of them." "President Presgrave, it appears that Liam is trying to kill you this time rather than to stop us from looking for his daughter." Elliot had underestimated Liam. Elliot didn't expect him to be ambitious because he kept a low profile in the family. In addition to wanting to join the Presgrave Group's board of directors, Liam also wanted to divide and obtain the group's property in such a cruel manner. He would make Liam pay dearly for what he had done when he returned to the country. They were immediately surrounded by the motorcycles. The gangsters began to bang on the car windows with the iron bars in their hands. As such, the bodyguard in the driver's seat swerved the car to knock down some of the outlaws, but the people banging on the windows were too many for them. Suddenly, a row of studs appeared in front of the moving car. It turned out that the motorcycles were only there to divert their attention, forcing the car to accelerate, and then unable to brake in time to avoid the studs. Sure enough, popping sounds were heard. Although the car tires were anti-puncture, the car was eventually slowed by the overwhelming number of nails. As a result, the 3 cars behind immediately accelerated and caught up. President Presgrave, it appears that we will have to get out of the car to deal with these gangsters. The captain of the bodyguard analyzed the situation calmly, knowing that they would be unable to proceed at all under the current circumstances. The cars behind us did not catch up with us, but were already entangled by them. We can only get out for the time being. Elliot nodded, after which the bodyguard neatly drew the car mat beneath his feet, revealing the spot where they hid their sophisticated and well-equipped weapons. Take this, President Presgrave. We must launch a successful counterattack against these outlaws. Elliot accepted the gun, and he was still well versed in the shooting techniques. Despite having been in the business industry for many years and maintaining a successful career, he clearly did not forget the skills he had learned while he was training in the secret army. To avoid the confrontation on the avenue, the car took a side road and drove into the dense woods. The 4 people in the car quickly exited the vehicle and sought shelter. At this point, the outlaws' cars rushed in, followed by the motorcycles arriving one by one. When the first man collapsed to the ground, the others instantly became vigilant. The outlaws lacked a comprehensive understanding of their adversaries. They were simply outlaws who wanted money after completing their missions, but this time they knew the target was a wealthy man. It was very simple for them to get rid of a businessman. However, when the second and third men were killed, their nerves were put to the test. Their opponent's skills and equipment were obviously superior, as was their shooting accuracy. Come on. Get your act together, everyone. Whoever kills the target receives $1 million as a reward. When the terrified men learned of the $1 million reward, they quickly regained their senses and spirits. They would never be able to make such good money in their lives, so today was their only chance. When the outlaws' leader discovered that they had lost 6 of their members, he became enraged and pulled out the bazooka they had just used to fire aimlessly at their opponents, eventually forcing one of Elliot's bodyguards to appear. While dodging bullets, the bodyguard injured his leg and fell to the ground at a position very close to Elliot. Elliot ignored the risk of being discovered while saving his bodyguard. He reached out and dragged his bodyguard to a safe location. Don't worry about me, President Presgrave. The most important thing right now is your safety, the bodyguard breathed out. His broken leg was bloodied and burned. Elliot removed his suit before he ripped off the shirt sleeve to expertly bandage the bodyguard's wound. Please bear with it for a while. We'll take you to the hospital as soon as we get back to the city. Even though the bodyguard grimaced in pain, he was moved. The reason why they were protective of Elliot was because he was a kind-hearted boss. Elliot was unlike any other businessman who didn't care about the lives of his subordinates. Instead, he always treated his bodyguards like brothers. Elliot's personality made his subordinates want to serve him, even if it meant risking their lives. At this fraction of moment, the outlaws discovered Elliot's hiding spot and immediately approached him. Elliot had to get up and leave to keep his subordinates safe, leading the group of outlaws in a different direction to distract them. A few bullets flew by his side and he deftly avoided them all. He ran to a high vantage point and aimed his shot at the 4 outlaws with no misses. They were shot dead before they could even call for help. Elliot returned to the injured bodyguard's side just as the captain of the bodyguard joined him. President Presgrave, could you please take Mark and depart in this direction? You can hail a cab along the way to get to the hospital. We'll go in the opposite direction to distract the outlaws, the captain said. I'll go with you, Elliot suggested. The stunned captain refused. No, your identity is too important for us to risk. We must. Stop talking nonsense. Let's go. Elliot stood up, ran 100 meters in a favorable direction, and fired 2 shots into the sky. The captain exhaled a sigh. He had to admit that the entire bodyguard team was less brave and capable than Elliot at times. Elliot was a truly admirable human being. At this point, the daylight had dwindled to a barely perceptible lightening of the gloom. Elliot and Reese, the captain of the bodyguard, had already drawn the outlaws into the dense forest area. Dusk arrived earlier than expected. Everything in the forest was hidden beneath it, as if a predator was on prey. "Be careful, President Presgrave," Reese reminded Elliot, since Reese had the responsibility to ensure the man's safety. The 35-year-old Reese's heart was cautious because he had to remain alert. Elliot nodded, and he checked his gun magazine holder and discovered that he only had one bullet left. He calmly reloaded it while Reese quickly handed over his firearm, saying, "Here, President Presgrave. I have 4 more and you can have mine." "No, keep it for yourself." Elliot gently shook his head. There were only about 10 outlaws left when they arrived in the deep woods. They had lost more than half of their members. The leader was irritated and enraged. They appeared to have underestimated their enemy this time. The information provided by the other party did not state how powerful the businessman was. However, the outlaw leader watched his brothers die one by one at Elliot's hands. "After you, President Presgrave." Reese made the decision to head deep into the forest. Elliot, on the other hand, was sick of running away from the situation. If he had to walk into the mountains, it would take him a few days to get out, and he didn't have time to wait that long. Elliot had only one thing on his mind: to bring Laurelai back so that he could finish the operation at his hospital and to calm his wife. Therefore, he didn't want to wait any longer. At this moment, Elliot noticed an outlaw approaching him in the bushes 6 meters away, so he motioned Reese to go forward with him. Reese's heart raced as he saw this and dashed behind Elliot. The outlaw went over to investigate when he heard a twig snap in the trees behind him, not realizing it was a stone thrown by Reese. As the outlaw looked around frantically for the source of the noise, Elliot stepped from behind him, snatched his weapon and took him down to finish him off. Elliot quickly looked at the gun's magazine and found it more than adequate. Instantly, his eyes turned as cold as a stone, and Reese followed suit when he saw Elliot's sleek figure moving toward the outlaws. Within minutes, flocks of frightened birds flew from the woods as it was accompanied by loud noises and screams. After 15 minutes, there was complete silence. Reese, who was holding a weapon, was dumbfounded that he had witnessed a scene from an action film whereby the man he was protecting, Elliot Presgrave, was the main character. "Let's go before the sun goes down," Elliot told Reese as he dropped the things in his hands. Reese was taken aback, and he quickly followed Elliot. While driving in the car that they came in, they contacted the other team members who were in the other 3 cars. The team members in those cars soon came to pick them up, but the 2 injured bodyguards had been transported to the hospital. Then, Elliot reached for his phone and dialed Anastasia's number. "Hello." "Hello, Elliot, is that you?" Anastasia's voice was tinged with emotion. "It's me." "Don't worry, I'm fine," he reassured her. She must have been worried at home for the past 2 hours. "You frightened the hell out of me." She sniffled, indicating that she must have shed tears beforehand. "I'm not going to die so easily. I still have to look after you and Jared for the rest of my life." Elliot tried to entice her with humor. On the other hand, Anastasia's tears became even more audible. "Could you kindly refrain from bringing up the subject of death? That's not what I want to hear from you." "Okay, fine. I won't bring it up again," Elliot coaxed tenderly. Elliot's demeanor surprised Reese. "Is he the same Mr. Presgrave who killed the outlaws in the woods?" Anastasia informed Elliot to return home early when she learned he would pick up Laurelai. Meanwhile, Laurelai sat on the sofa, sipping vitality serum for nourishment. She wanted to go outside for fresh air to calm down, as she felt tense and stifled within the villa. Then, she recalled her mother's warning and knew she had to stay put. At night, the villa stood out even more prominently. Several shadowy people showed up in front of the villa's outer wall, and the bodyguards led the way as they climbed up the wall. Laurelai was asleep in her bedroom when she became aware of the sound. Panicked, she rose to her feet and yelled for her assistant, but nobody responded. As she walked down the hall, she was thinking about her assistant when she noticed the door to her house being forced open and a tall figure enveloped in a subtle aroma of blood entering the house with a gloomy coldness. Laurelai stepped back quickly and trembled as she was overwhelmed with fear. The man who appeared before her at this time was not the same man who had once held her heart. Instead, he was a dangerous incarnation of Hades, who had come down from hell himself. Elliot, what are you doing here?" She maintained her composure, but her emotions were in disarray. When she looked closer, she discovered Elliot's suit was smeared with a red dye that resembled human blood. In an instant, Laurelai had a realization about something. Her mother had not informed her of the plan. Is that what Dad was attempting to do by ambushing him? "Will you return home with me voluntarily, or will you make me use force to bring you back?" Elliot said coldly. When he looked at the girl in front of him, with whom he had spent his childhood together, he no longer felt anything. He felt disgusted to the point where he didn't want to look at her again. "I'm not going back, and I'm not going anywhere." An emotional Laurelai shook her head and begged, "Elliot, the child is already in my womb. May I give birth to it? I promise the baby will grow up to be a healthy child." When Elliot realized she was still adamant and foolish, he coldly said, "Laurelai, you are not qualified to give birth to my child at all. But I want to give birth to your child. I won't ask for anything in return. I only want to have 2 children related to you by blood. I promise I will never trouble you again. I assure you, Elliot, that I will never get married again in my whole life. I will take excellent care of these 2 children." Laurelai endeavored to make a favorable impression on the man. "Laurelai, the person affected the most in this situation is my wife. You don't take her seriously, and she is the one whom I love the most. Do you think I will give you a chance to hurt my wife?" Angry and frustrated, he yelled, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. Laurelai was startled by his anger, and she supported herself with the use of a couch and gently sat down. If she hadn't sat down, her legs would have been so weak that she would have collapsed to the ground otherwise. "I'm sorry I hurt Anastasia's feelings, but I love you too. From a young age, I had a crush on you. Perhaps I would have been the one to marry you if my father hadn't forbidden my return. You see, there was no Anastasia when we first met." Laurelai remarked with red eyes, as she had always felt that she was just unlucky that she was born into the Presgrave family and had a strict father. Otherwise, she would undoubtedly be able to pursue her happiness. "I don't need your dirty love, so come home with me now." Elliot firmly said, "If you don't return with me, you will never see your father again. I'll have the baby aborted, and your family will suffer a life worse than death." "Elliot, you can't treat my family that way, they're the Presgraves." Laurelai was worried since she still had a younger brother, who was just 18 and with a great future ahead of him. "It's not about whether or not I lay my hand on them, but more about your cooperation today. If you cooperate, I will do what needs to be done." As Elliot said in a low voice, the murderous purpose that could be seen in his eyes intensified at this very instant. Laurelai took a deep breath. Was Elliot going to kill her here? And what made her think that he would do something like that? Why did he have such a deep love for Anastasia? "All right, I'll come back with you." Laurelai had given up hope since she was convinced that Elliot would abandon their children despite her efforts to give birth to them. Why should her children be condemned from the moment they were born? She used to delude herself into thinking that Elliot had affection for her. Still, it appeared he was only interested in Anastasia and has no room in his heart for other women. Lorelai's 2 assistants came inside, but they were held by the 2 bodyguards standing beside them and didn't have the nerve to say a word. "Let's go back, Miss Presgrave." The assistant pleaded as well. If it weren't for the money, they never would have followed her and risked their lives in such jeopardy. When they turned to look at Elliot standing in the hallway, they suddenly became aware of how they had infuriated him. "Pack up and let's go." Lorelai, with her eyes closed, murmured frantically. This reckless move embarrassed her family, landed her father in prison, and angered Elliot. Her family would soon be compelled to leave in the future, and there would be no possibility for them to be cared for by the Presgraves. In the middle of the night, the car set off for the airport, and approximately 3 hours later, the plane took off from the local airport. At this very time, a convoy was passing by a luxurious manor, and Martha, seated in the rear seat, held her mobile phone and angrily dialed her grandson's number. "Hello, Grandma," the other end of the line answered the phone as if nothing had happened. "Artie, are you messing with me?" Martha was about to explode. "Calm down, Grandma. You're old, so don't get too worked up. I believe you are overly wayward. You're not taking me seriously. You've finally matured, haven't you? I'm going to freeze all of your cards from now on. I'll only unfreeze them when you come back," she yelled in rage. On the other end of the phone line, Arthur laughed and said, "Grandma, you vastly underestimate your grandson's capability. I can live comfortably even without the cards."
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.